Canadians and Americans might not agree on everything right now. But at this time of year, maybe we can find a bit of common ground, because, the Easter Bunny knows no borders.
People in America love the Cadbury Creme Egg. It has become an American tradition as much as it's become a Canadian and UK tradition. No, the Cadbury Creme Egg in America, however, produced by Hershey, is different than the Cadbury Creme Egg you're going to get in Canada.
So we both like a nice Cadbury Creme Egg, even if their chocolate isn't quite as good. Hi, I'm Paul Haavardsrud. Welcome to The Cost of Living. Can a good Canadian chocolate bar end the trade war? Coffee crisp diplomacy? Well, no. But later in the show, we'll talk to a candy bar historian about what, at this chocolatiest time of year, we have in common with our neighbors to the south and where we're different. Also today, if you're on autopilot when renewing your auto insurance, you may want to take a beat and give it a second look. You could save a few bucks. Up first, going by election promises, defense spending is about to jump by tens of billions. That's a lot of new money. How and where it gets spent is high stakes for the military, taxpayers, and the economy. Mike McGinty runs a software company out of Kelowna. What they do exactly is pretty techy, but boiling it down.
We make AI software for automatic object recognition.
Can you slow down what you said? You said you make AI software for what now?
Automatic object recognition.
Which in layman's terms means?
Seeing things and knowing what they are automatically.
His company, TerraSense, is developing that technology for the military. So this is battlefield stuff. It's using AI to pinpoint exactly what everything is. That's a tank, that's a person, that's a fence post. The way Mike explains it, his technology uses AI to do the grunt work, which lets our human brains focus on the tougher stuff.
If you were to take back to my personal experience, where I was an Apache helicopter pilot in Afghanistan, so it's night in the dark, you're being shot at, there are other aircraft, there's all sorts of things that can go wrong. You're having to spend a huge amount of your cognitive effort to decide what is that and where is it. Then we're going to decide what am I going to do about it and do that thing. And so what we want is humans to be focusing on that decision. What is the right thing to do here? Right morally, right operationally, not what is that.
That technology is specifically for the military. At least for now. The defense industry has a long history of what's called dual-use technology. The internet, drones, duct tape, all trace their roots to military R&D. When that technology trickles down into the civilian world, it can be the backbone for cottage industries that spin out jobs and boost the economy. And Canada's economy has some big needs right now. Diversifying away from the US, increasing productivity. Achieving those things will take government spending money. And a whole lot more money, if you listen to election promises, is about to go to defense.
We will also build a military that is ready to fight threats that Canada is facing.
We're looking at ramping up defense spending in the next 5 years to 70 or 80 billion a year. That's nearly twice where we are now. That would make defense one of the biggest items in the federal budget. Now, the conversation around Canada meeting its NATO spending commitment, 2% of GDP, has changed in a hurry. That'll happen when your allies start calling you out and Trump threatens to annex Greenland. But saying we'll spend more on defense, as all the major parties are doing, is the easy part. The harder part is how. Will we pile up more debt? Spend less on other stuff? Or could we get two birds with one stone? If we're going to spend that money, could it boost the military and the economy?
There's sort of two schools of thought. There's optimism, because that is big money and it can make a huge difference. But of course, if you do it poorly, what it could mean is a whole lot of foreign firms get this expenditure and we do very little for our own economy.
Kristen Canfrani is the head of the Canadian Association of Defence and Security Industries. It's the lobby group for the country's defence industry. She sees smart spending as money that stays here and is spent on the Canadian companies she represents. To make that happen, she says the feds, when we're buying stuff like submarines from other countries, will need to be much more hands-on.
You can make a very interventionist approach to how you deal with these partners in order to get more high-value work in Canada. So you start to direct the relationship that you have with these vendors. It's we want our operation and maintenance being done by companies in Canada. We want maybe the operation maintenance of your new Leopard tanks that we're probably going to buy too, done in Canada. Like that is what we would call a big government to government or a big G to G deal. I call it like horse trading. What are we horse trading?
Maintenance may not sound sexy, but those dollars can add up. Over the life of the equipment, she says it can be as much as 4 times the amount of the original sticker price. So if we spend $60 billion on new submarines from Korea, doing the maintenance here for the next 20 years could total hundreds of billions. In defense circles, they call that leveraging the spend.
You need to be very, very directive with the companies that you're dealing with and the nations that you're dealing with that are supplying you to say, you know, we are mandating that when we buy it, you must give us the intellectual property for us to be able to do that in Canada, or you must teach us how to do that in Canada.
She argues that what Ottawa needs to do is come up with a defense industrial policy. We don't really have that now. We rely more on the free market. This would be big interventionist government being more heavy-handed. It would be quite a shift. Where it gets tricky is when you get into the nuts and bolts of what that would take and what could go wrong.
When you intervene by the government, who are you intervening to protect? You're usually intervening to protect kind of the national industry. And then we can often ask ourselves, which firms are being protected? There's a choice of who's the best, who's the most likely. And literally, it's like a discriminatory practice. Let's be clear.
Anessa Kimball is a professor at Laval and a director of the Canadian Defence and Security Network. She says you need to be ready for what can happen when governments start picking winners and losers. It opens things up to cronyism, pork barrel politics, and other stuff that can be the opposite of helping the economy.
You think that you're supporting innovation and all of that and all of these small companies, but you're actually not. Sometimes when you actually do the awarding of these contracts and you kind of say, okay, you have to do like this company or firm, this location. A lot of times the resources don't exist. And so the government ends up putting in more money to help support the establishment of a factory somewhere. So now you've tried to give out a little piece, but you actually have to draw from another part of your pocket to make that happen.
Anessa does agree Canada needs a plan for the billions of new dollars about to go out the door. That includes actually getting that money out the door. She's working on a book called Decisions Made Too Late.
The story of how Canada's defense policy has frustrated me for 20 years.
She says our current system of military procurement has layers upon layers of oversight. Politicians watching civil servants who watch them back, the net effect of which can be paralysis. Look at our big purchase of F-35 fighter jets. That started 15 years ago. It's on pause. Again. So if the military struggles to spend the money it gets now, she wonders how it can handle billions more.
We change requirements all the time. One of the other reasons that we're very behind in procurement is because we make decisions and then we come back and we change things. We say, oh, we didn't really want that. We need this requirement. We add requirements, we change requirements, shift them. Like I say, decisions made too late.
Almost everyone involved in the defense industry has ideas for how to spend the new money that's on the way. Build roads and airstrips in the north that are needed for Arctic security that can also be used by mining companies to get at critical minerals. R&D into cybersecurity. It's a long list. A flood of taxpayer money is going to be spent on something. Done right, Anessa says it could help the military and the economy. Or it could be billion-dollar boondoggles and roads to nowhere. When we talked, Mike McGinty, the CEO of TerraSense, was at a defense industry conference. He described the mood there as
hopeful but frustrated.
This is not exactly like the cheery backslapping you'd expect from defense contractors who have billions coming their way. But at the same time, yeah, like he said, he is hopeful.
This is a generational opportunity in terms of the situation of the world, the fact that I think voters might go with it, that defense is on the agenda. But we can continue to spend the money that we spend and not necessarily get the value we would wish from it. And that might be what happens. So I hope we grasp the opportunity to make the changes we really ought to, which start with a policy and they start with political will to really make things happen differently.
Meeting the current NATO target could just be a start. Other countries are already talking about spending 3 and 4% of GDP. So this country's defense budget could be going even higher. Now, that money will be spent. The question for the economy is how well. If you're trying to save a few bucks, which is now like a national hobby, you've probably already canceled a few subscriptions. You buy in bulk, shop around. But if you're really looking for ways to cut costs, Danielle Nerman says there's a place you may have overlooked. Because it's kind of boring, it only comes around once a year, and honestly, who likes reading their auto insurance policy?
Jenna Cardell has used her car to go camping, move ridiculously large furniture. She's even taken it storm chasing all over Alberta.
I named him Maxwell, and we love Maxwell.
Maxwell is a 2002 Nissan Maxima. When Jenna bought Maxwell, she was a student on a tight budget and a fairly new driver. So the first insurance quote she got was a bit of a shock.
And I was like, are you for real? Like, I was like, you cannot be serious. And I remember just saying, like, I'm not doing well financially. What can we do about this?
Right now, a lot of people might be asking themselves that same question. In the last year, auto insurance premiums across Canada have increased almost 9%. The biggest annual jump in a decade. Aaron Sutherland is with the Insurance Bureau of Canada.
I can tell you when it comes to the cost trends and the pressures that we are seeing, those are going in the wrong direction. You know, severe weather events, those are getting worse, not better. They're getting more frequent and more expensive.
The recent rise in auto thefts isn't helping. Plus, newer cars have more tech, so they cost more to fix. And then there's the tariffs. If they stick around, Aaron says they'll raise insurance rates even more.
That is going to have an impact on the price of replacement vehicles, on the price of repairs, and all of that means more pressure on insurance premiums moving forward.
I'm an insurance guy, and I can confidently tell you, I do not get excited to look at my insurance policy that comes in annually.
Sharif Jamail is the CEO of Trufla, a company that provides tech solutions for the insurance industry.
It is not an exciting day. Usually it's like, oh God, here we go.
But the good news is there are ways to chisel down the price of your car insurance. The easiest place to start? Your deductible. Sharif says if you can increase it to $2,500 or more, it will drop your monthly payments. You can also get discounts by allowing insurers to track your driving behavior through an app.
How fast you're driving, U-turning when you shouldn't be,
Will it recognize my rolling stop?
It could. It could.
It's called usage-based insurance.
If I drive well and I can prove that I'm driving well, I can bring down the cost of my car insurance. And some insurance companies, it's 25%.
But for even bigger savings, you could take a chance and drop collision from your insurance policy. It's a risk, but it might make sense if you drive an older car, like Jenna Cardell with her 2002 Nissan Maxima.
So in talking to my dad, he said, Maxwell's pretty old. I don't think you would get a lot for him if you were to get into a huge accident with him. Hopefully not. But I think you can do without collision. I think you can probably go pretty simple and bare bones.
She was able to get her insurance down to around $100 a month, and she went 10 years without an accident. But this winter, Jenna hit a patch of black ice, and her car was toast.
And I totaled Maxwell, and that was the end of our beautiful story together.
Looking back, though, on the money she saved, Jenna says it was the right decision.
If you're like ridiculously broke and just starting off your insurance, like broke like I was, yeah, maybe skip collision. If that buys you a couple extra cups of noodles, then that's a win.
For The Cost of Living, I'm Danielle Nerman.
This is The Cost of Living. I'm Paul Haavardsrud. We've spent a lot of time in the last few months thinking about our neighbors south of the border, how we're different, what we have in common. A trade war will do that. So in this, the chocolatiest time of the year, why can't you get a coffee crisp in Kansas City or a Baby Ruth in Burnaby? When it comes to chocolate, can we say viva la différence? Or is it one more thing rending our nations apart? In lieu of the Easter Bunny, who rarely weighs in on politics, we're joined by Jason Liebig. He's a candy historian who's been called the Indiana Jones of snacks. Hi, Jason.
Hi there. How's it going?
So Jason, you're American, but we, of course, still value your opinion.
I appreciate it.
Who has better chocolate bars?
Well, that is, as all things, taste is up to the individual, and tastes vary and opinions vary. Those people who tend to look down their nose at American chocolate, they will sort of devalue Hershey's chocolate. I do not. I love Hershey's chocolate, and it's not a premium brand. It was meant to be the first sort of chocolate bar for every man, and that's what it succeeded in doing and continues to do to this day.
Well, let's talk about why it's such a specific taste then. Are there differences between chocolate bars in Canada and chocolate bars in the U.S.?
Yes. U.S. chocolate has a bit more of a firmer resistance. More critical people would call that waxy. I would not. But like European chocolate or Cadbury chocolate in the UK is sweeter. There's a higher fat content. And Canada tends to have taken on the European sort of production of chocolate.
Do we have different tastes in chocolate depending on where you live?
Yeah, I think that's a matter of just where you were born, and so it's what you're used to. That's just familiarity. So yes, we develop different tastes for chocolate based on where you grew up. If you grew up in the United States, chances are the Hershey's chocolate, Hershey's Kisses, these were how you formed your opinion of chocolate. If you grew up in Canada, that's far less so. In Canada, you probably have a more European opinion and sense of flavor of what chocolate is and can be.
That makes us sound so refined. Well, yes, thank you, Jason. We are very European, aren't we?
Yes, it's true. I believe that.
Well, can we talk about this at the corporate level? I mean, who is making most of the candy bars that we're eating here in Canada?
Well, you have Nestle, who makes a lot of them, and you have Cadbury, who makes a lot of them, and you do have Hershey Canada, who's manufacturing quite a lot. Those I'd say are the three main players in Canada right now. Cadbury in Canada has direct lineage to the Cadbury in the UK. It is essentially shared ownership. Cadbury in the United States is a licensing agreement, so it's Cadbury in name and Cadbury in style, but it is a license and produced by Hershey of America.
And What about the Cadbury Creme Egg? Because right now it's Easter. We're eating a lot of cream eggs
Yes.
here. Do Americans kind of like dig on a Cadbury Creme Egg?
Well, some of us do. I'm not the biggest fan of the Cadbury Cream Egg, just because I have like a 14-year-old sensibility, like a white goo just scares me. But yes, no, people in America love the Cadbury Cream Egg. It has become an American tradition as much as it's become a Canadian and UK tradition. No, the Cadbury Cream Egg in America, however, produced by Hershey, is different than the Cadbury Cream Egg you're going to get anywhere else in the world.
How so?
It is the Hershey's version of Cadbury chocolate, which is not the Cadbury chocolate you get in Canada or the Cadbury chocolate you would get in the UK. It's a little different. It is not straight Hershey's chocolate that you would get in a Hershey chocolate bar. It's sort of somewhere in the middle. It's Hershey's version of Cadbury chocolate.
So if we look at some of these big conglomerates that make a lot of chocolate bars, I mean, you mentioned Nestle, you mentioned Hershey's, but I'm wondering, do these big companies have different formulations in different countries, like not just in Canada, but around the world?
That is almost certainly true. Some of that would be trade secrets that they're not going to release, but absolutely. When a company, regionalization just within the United States, when the chocolate bar manufacturing was becoming national, they were realizing people had different tastes in different parts of the country, and they needed to address that. And certainly over time, manufacturers, these large conglomerates, will adjust their recipes if they see taste changing. But absolutely, from country to country, they will look at what works, what doesn't work, and they will say, okay, this, Canada, for instance, has more of a European sensibility for chocolate. Hershey's of Canada is probably going to move away from their more American blend of how they make milk chocolate. Maybe they're going to up the fat content a little bit. I know Hershey over in Southeast Asia has had a really difficult time selling the Reese's Peanut Butter Cup, because if you go to Japan, they look at peanut butter the way some of us over here look at like Marmite or Vegemite. It doesn't make sense to them. It doesn't make sense to their palates, and they reject it outright.
So this really kind of speaks to the reason why Hershey is so big in the States. But Hershey, we have Hershey's bars and Hershey's Kisses, but they're not super popular here. Like, do you see a moment where maybe Canadians would ever, forsake our crispy crunches and Hershey might be able to break through in this market?
Oh, I think where food, and especially where confection products are concerned, I think there is a deep and abiding relationship that is formed in adolescence, and early on in your life. And tradition is very strong, and our, brand loyalty, our brand fandom, as I like to call it, which is like an elevated brand loyalty, is hard to break. And certainly, look, during these days, during these trade wars, people's loyalty doubles down. So I really don't see a time. Look, Hershey makes great products. They really do. Nestle does as well. Cadbury does. So they're all going to have a place at the table. But I don't see a time when Canada is going to turn away from the coffee crisp or, the products that they're known for up there.
What's interesting here, if you think about not just big confectionery companies, but big companies across the board, a General Mills, a Procter & Gamble, a lot of the products they make are the same wherever you go, right? They really homogenize products and sell them around the world. They benefit from economies of scale. But chocolate, from this conversation, seems to have resisted that kind of sameness, that kind of homogenization. I mean, does chocolate have kind of a special place?
I think it does. I think your point is really strong. If you are a franchise restaurant, look, McDonald's is such a great example. The whole point of McDonald's is you get a cheeseburger in Ohio, it's going to taste a certain way. You get a cheeseburger in Australia or Tokyo or Rome, it's going to be about that same experience, right? That is sort of the value of that brand, that you know what you're getting when you go into it. Is chocolate special? I do think it is. I do think it is something that is not simply just a product. It is a reflection of the people who buy it, and the culture and the traditions of that country and that place. And I think it goes back to how candy manufacturing is a foundationally entrepreneurial business. It always started with someone trying to cook something in their kitchen. It started small and then just grew. All these companies started typically with someone in a room just saying, I want to make something and sell it out of a cart. And so I think chocolate, especially in confections, they just reflect the people who made them and the culture around them. And while, yes, we are a much more homogenous society globally than we've ever been, we are not completely homogenous.
You know, our countries are obviously working through some, let's call it some stuff right now. You're, the Indiana Jones of snacks. You're not necessarily an international relations expert, but I'm wondering, if you look at this through the lens of candy, is there any common ground to be found right now through chocolate?
Yes, absolutely. I think the thing is, when I talk to people, who come from Canada, who come from Europe, people say, "Oh, you've got the greatest stuff here." Well, I feel that way when I go to Canada, when I go to the UK. I feel like they've got the most exciting stuff. And this idea that variety is the spice of life, this old cliche, well, it's a cliche because it's true. We crave new experiences, we crave different experiences, and I think how products like these confections can be the bridge is that we offer them to each other. We offer new experiences to each other. This is the wonder of exchange, and I was going to say this is the wonder of free trade, but we don't have free trade right now. But yeah, I do think these products, they offer that. They offer a chance to experience something different and new, and that's exciting.
Well, Jason Liebig, viva la différence, at least.
Viva la différence.
Thanks for coming by.
Thank you.
Jason Liebig is a candy and snack food historian. You can catch him on the History Channel's The Food That Built America. That's all for the show. The Cost of Living is based in Calgary. The show is produced by Danielle Nerman, Blair Sanderson, and Jennifer Keene, with help from Jeff Kynock. I'm Paul Haavardsrud. Thanks for listening.